Swales, When Burnout Becomes Reality podcast creator, producer, host, everything really. A podcast that was born out of my own lived experience of burnout and my desire to connect with people who were or are going through or have gone through burnout and share my own experience. And it's evolved from there to also having guests come on the show and for me to share professional wisdom as to how to navigate this thing we call burnout to help prevent, recover, and really transform and evolve so we don't get burnt out again. So this is When Burnout Becomes Reality podcast. Please note that whilst my guests, some of us work in the burnout field and we are coaches, counselors, therapists in this space, that the information we do provide, the wisdom that we do share, cannot be tailored to meet your personal needs and should not be a replacement of going out there and getting personalized help and support from a professional in burnout for yourself. I can't stress that enough. And please, if you are finding you need immediate counselling, I really encourage to link with your a GP, a doctor, to help you with that. Here in Australia, we also have national telephone and online services, Lifeline 131114. And especially if there is any risk to yourself, if you're feeling suicidal, please contact your local emergency services, or national, I should say. Here in Australia, that is 000, and also Lifeline 131114. With that in mind, please sit back, or if you're someone who listens to your pod while exercising or your commute, whatever you're doing, I hope that you find this episode enlightening and supportive in your journey and your experience with burnout. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now. In this episode, Michelle Gardiner, a passionate and driven woman, shares with us her experiences of burnout across her two careers. Her first as a social worker working in the child protection industry for over a decade, and the second more recently as an entrepreneur with her own business. Some key insights that you'll gain from tuning into her story is one, how passion and drive without personal boundaries contributes to burnout. Two, the importance of setting aside time to deeply reflect on where one is at, what is working, what is not working in your work and in your personal life, and making those changes. And the third, learning to tune in and understand one's energy levels and then making the changes in one's work and personal life to work with those energy levels. There is so much more to gain from tuning into Michelle's burnout recovery and growth experience. So sit back, tune in, and absorb everything she has to say. Thank you so much for listening. Take care of you. We have another guest here with us today who I got to meet through, or virtually meet, through a mutual friend of ours, Rowena Hicks, who was a guest on my podcast a while back. And on our chat, amazingly offered to come on as a guest and share her burnout experience. And I've so much thanks and gratitude for her being here today to share this with you. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thanks for having me.
More than welcome. Loving that kitchen background. Absolutely loving it. It's making me want to have a coffee. Like I'm seeing that coffee machine and like, I want it. I was wondering if you could share with the listeners a little bit about yourself. We can get to know Michelle.
Yeah, where should I start?
Big question, right?
Yeah, it's like broad, which is crazy because that's the question I ask everyone else as well. Who are you in the world?
Oh, I love that. Who you are in the world. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it is. So my name is Michelle. I'm from Melbourne in Australia, although I've also spent a number of years in Ubud in Bali, and that has been my primary base for a long time. And over the last couple of years, I've been bringing myself back to Australia, and I think I'm almost living here. It's close enough to saying that. I feel like I don't want to start with a professional thing. I want to start with some of the personal stuff and then I'll share the professional side. So, what can I tell you about myself personally? I love dance.
Oh.
I have a strong dance background, particularly in Latin dance styles.
Mhm.
And I love being out in the sunshine. I love that even though it's the middle of August, we have had a stream of 21-degree days in Melbourne. I
What?
know, unheard
That's
of.
strange. Yeah, that's hot. Well, warm for Melbourne. Hey.
It's like
Mm.
it's like the end of spring in Melbourne, but it's like not even spring yet. I love I love people. I've
Mm.
always loved people and I love humanity. I love community. I love bringing people together.
Mm.
Whether that's around like a dining room table or whether it's like in a community space or whether it's like some big global thing,
Mm.
that is one of my favorite things in the world is bringing people together. I love thinking about big ideas. I love having conversations about big ideas.
Mm.
And, when I was in Melbourne, one of my favorite things was to ride bicycles. So I'll end with that.
Mm. Lovely. My
Yeah.
brain goes to how does that go in Melbourne riding bicycles? Do you guys have designated bike lanes? Sorry, my
Yeah.
brain went to safety. I went to because I've been down in Melbourne and the big city and trams and cars and buses and I'm just like, okay, bikes. How's that
Well,
going?
it's funny you say that because right before I left Bali, I was like, and I was riding a scooter in
Oh,
Bali.
wow.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and right before I left, I was like, hang on. I think all of those years living in the city and riding a bicycle around through peak hour traffic, through tram,
Yes.
trains, and all of that stuff, I think that was the best training for Bali.
Very good point there, because I always find the whole bike on the road, even here in Brisbane, interesting. You've got to have your wits about you and be very aware of the traffic around you. And yeah, so and I've only been to Bali once, but in that experience, I think I went on a scooter in Phuket, not Bali, and I wasn't driving. My husband was. But just that chaos and obviously different rules and roads. But yeah, that would be an excellent training ground, Melbourne. I can see that. Nice, nice. Glad to know that you're safe though. Me being risk averse, I'm like, oh my God, be safe. But getting out there on a bike and enjoying the environment, that'd be lovely. So,
Yes.
so getting to know a little bit about, what makes you, did you want to share a little bit about what you do, or do you want to leave that to later and we can go into, your burnout experience? But yeah, or share a little bit about what you do in the world.
Yeah, I will. I will. So, by background, I'm a social worker. I started in the child protection space, first response when I was 22. So, trained as a social worker, and I've trained in child psychoanalytic
Yeah.
psychotherapy, narrative therapy. I'm doing my master's currently in narrative therapy, yoga teacher, training, coaching, all of that kind of realm of stuff.
Mm.
And it all kind of came together when I was in my mid 30s. At the time, I was working for a peak advocacy body for children and young people in out of home care here in Melbourne.
Mm.
Although I was also traveling around the state and sometimes around Australia as well.
Mm.
And a lot of the work that I was doing at that point was facilitation and helping young people to share their story and
Mm.
helping young people to have a voice in the child protection, out of home care, and other cross sectors.
Wow.
And so doing lots of stuff around leadership empowerment camps and programs and workshops and a lot of creating from scratch big events and also putting young people in front of ministers, commissioners, CEOs and getting them to share their stories
Wow.
and also speak publicly about what they
Mm.
would like to see changed in the sector, and then lots of training with workers in the sector and with
Oh yeah.
government around how they can build a better rapport with young people. So, in
Mm.
my mid 30s, what happened personally was
Mm.
that I was at a point where I was like, well, what does it mean in the world when you've outgrown all your female role models? Where do you next step? I
Mm.
started getting really interested in women's leadership
Mm.
and also was going down the path of, well, who on earth am I
Mm.
to start talking about women's leadership? So, and that's the right way of putting it. Usually I put an F word in there, but
This is like, you can totally swear
context.
on this podcast if you'd like to. I'm okay if you're comfortable with it. There's always a warning on my pod.
Yeah, trigger warning. Yeah, so and it was actually through that I ended up in the Amazon jungle. I ended up packing up life. I ended up going on this soul searching journey, really. And I'd started the Aspire series, but at the same time, it was women's circles and yoga classes. And I remembered I didn't like teaching people how to move their body, and I also realized that I would get bored of women's circles quite quickly because I know that there's so much more that I can draw out of women. I needed something far bigger to
Yeah.
prove. So yeah, the idea was to take off and go traveling for 6 months. The problem was that I left at the end of January 2020, which meant that about 6 weeks later, I had a very tough call to make. Do I stay in Bali, which was my first stop, or I returned to Australia? And given that it had taken so long for me to pack up my life in Australia, I decided to stay in Bali, thinking it would be a couple of months.
Yeah.
2.5 years until I could leave. It was during that time, fast forward to the middle of 2021, where, a lot of things had fallen down in my own life. It's almost like a true rites of passage where the old world had fallen away, but the new world hadn't yet revealed itself. What ended up coming out of that was the crux of what I truly wanted to create next, which was the new evolution of the Aspire series, as a global platform for women leading change and impact. So we fast forward 2.5 years, we've published 2 books, each holding 5 women's stories from continents. One is an impact-based book with Balinese and Indonesian women stories solely, and the other one is women from all over the world. And then we're just about to publish the second book, which is also with women all around the world who are using their stories to impact change. And then the second impact book is all African women. So, so there's the book series, which has formulated into a community, a really strong and growing community across the world. And we have a global women's change and impact summit in Bali, Indonesia in June each year. We've just run the second one. We had 50 women, 45 flew in from around the world. And then we're also having an impact trip to Africa to meet the African women in March as well. And we'll be traveling across 4 countries and launching the books in 3 countries. So, and then the mentorship program as well. And that's the crux of series has turned into.
Yeah. What a journey you have been on. From that 22-year-old social worker right through to leading and bringing together women in a community, and stepping into that leadership, as you were saying, that you got to that point in your career of, when you've outgrown your female role models and wanting to step in to that next level. But it's that journey that you went on to find that, and some obviously very unexpected things along the way, but all led to this. And thank you with sharing that rich part of your history as well. I was wondering, getting to the burnout experience and how that, where all that transpired for you. Can you, share us wherever you want to start with, share where that fit into all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were talking about before we began, I feel like that, well, I know that there have been several instances of burnout at different points. And I guess there are 2 lenses that I would like to look at it within. One is within the social work field. The other one is from the lens of being an entrepreneur as well, which I don't feel is spoken about anywhere near as much. But both are extremely, extremely, I don't know what the right word is, vital, important. I feel like it's something else, but
something a bit more, maybe it will come as you share your stories. But thank you. That as you mentioned and we spoke about before we started, that burnout cycle. And for you, it occurred during your social work part of your career, and it's also occurred through your entrepreneur part of your career, as you shared with us. So yeah, maybe take us to the social work lens experience of burnout first, if you feel compelled to go there first.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as mentioned, I was a very green 22-year-old
Yeah.
starting in front end child
Mm.
protection.
Yeah.
Everyone worked in out of home care. And so imagine like going into families' homes and making some really big calls and asking some really big and intimate questions
Mm.
about lives. And yeah, navigating some really tough stuff. Like people are in like their most crisis driven parts of their
Yeah.
lifetime, really.
Yeah.
And you have the power to say, well, actually, I can hand a few pieces of paper over and I can remove your children. Like obviously it's a lot more complex than that, but when
Yeah.
you're walking in, like this is what you're walking into.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
huge. Mm.
Huge, and making some really, really big calls as well
Mm.
around what's going on inside families too, and
Mm.
often bits and pieces of information, high stress, lots of turnover, all the things that
Yeah.
you know exist. I suppose that I don't know where I read this or heard this, but I think somewhere along the way I went through a phase where I was really interested in vicarious trauma and
Mm.
is it cumulative harm? Cumulative harm. No,
Oh,
there's
no.
something else as well. Cumulative harm is for kids, but I think that exists definitely in terms of
Mm.
workers as well. Like
Mm.
constantly hearing stories of trauma, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, that's how I capture, from my understanding of learning about vicarious trauma, is the accumulation of constantly hearing and seeing the trauma, most of the time hearing it, but yeah, also maybe witnessing it, that over time it does accumulate that harm on our psyche. And that's how I see vicarious trauma, rightly or wrongly. I'm still growing and developing, but that's how I understand it. Yeah, but that cumulative effect of exposure, which in the child safety industry, particularly in the work you were doing and how young you were, as well, just I think even no matter what age, but I just think, yeah, like it's a lot. It's a lot. Mm.
it's huge. It's huge. So
Mm.
I think there are a few different sides to it. So one is that I read somewhere that if you've gone through your own childhood trauma, you're much more susceptible to going through burnout as an adult.
Yeah.
So I think there was a piece of that in it in terms of my own history.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, this wasn't something I reflected on until
Mm.
after the fact, years later. But I come from a family where my dad worked
Mm.
extremely hard, and it was always my belief that that's what you do in life. You work extremely hard. You don't take holidays. You don't take sick leave. Like you just do the thing. You do the thing you have
Yeah.
to do, and you be a role model worker.
Yeah, that relentless work ethic that you learnt through your parents' modeling, your dad's modeling. They took that. That's often a very common factor within people's burnout, is that relentless work ethic, that, and they've even noted that they picked up through their family. Yeah, yeah.
Totally. And so there's
Mm.
this whole thing around, like, I think
Mm.
it is the best workers that end up the most burnt out because they're
Mm.
the ones that are dedicated and they're ones that have the most passion. And I think this is a huge part of my burnout history as well, is I'm
Okay.
passionate about what I do,
Mm.
which means
Mm.
I'm almost like a dog trying to get after a bone. And I'm like, don't you mess with me. I know where I'm going. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, full steam ahead kind of thing. Get out of her way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Full steam ahead. We're on this mission. Let's go.
Yeah.
Which is
That
awesome.
passion. I hear that a lot too. And that was really interesting to me because it was different to my experience and some of the ones that I'd heard. And, but yeah, it's so true. The passion, because they're like, I love what I do. So why am I burning out? I love it. I'm passionate. And it's like, yeah, it's that dog with the bone kind of situation, and not resting or stopping to revive and replenish. Yeah, to keep going. But anyway, yeah, that's something you've recognized, that, oh, yeah. Mm.
Absolutely. And it's funny, like some of the stuff I've been listening to more recently, it's like, oh, if you're not on your true path, then that's when you experience burnout because,
Yeah.
something that's misaligned. And it's like, that actually hasn't been my truth. My
Mm.
truth has been that I feel like I've always been on my
Yeah.
truth. Whatever I've been doing, it's another evolution of the same thing.
Mm.
And it's like the next unveiling and the next evolution. But the
Mm.
problem with that is because I am so passionate about it, I'm so
Yeah.
purpose driven,
Yeah.
that you do sometimes go, oh my, and I get super excited about things. It's
Yeah.
almost like this constitution in me that predisposes a burnout
Yeah.
effect.
Yeah.
And it takes a real awareness to counterbalance that. And also, there's something, I feel like I'm going into a different space. I'll step back again, but there's also something like putting boundaries in place with yourself. It's not even external sometimes, it's like with yourself.
Yeah.
Moderating your own passion.
No, well, a lot of it is. No, I feel like, these are the things that you've come to learn about what has contributed for you to the burnout, and things that are just part of you, and then learning how to work with them, like putting those boundaries in, those very personal boundaries to work with yourself. That, because of course we don't want to change or necessarily can change that real focus driven passion or want to change that, but how can we, and what I'm hearing from you is how can we put some boundaries around that so you can continue that passionate path while sustainably, as I think you've used that word before.
Totally.
It's like that other burnout, like, we often hear about that type of burnout where people are understimulated, their value mismatched, they're not on their path. And that was definitely a lot to do with mine. I was on someone else's path, not my own. But yeah, yours was, no, you were on your true path, still on your true path. It was more about that overstimulation, maybe due to that really good focus, and really, well, that I was about to use the word hyper focus, but that's that needing to be able to work with that, to look after you.
Yeah. Like it's sort of been different at different points. Like I would say some of the clincher in the early stuff around the child protection stuff, like that was, I think it had like in about 6 weeks, I had about I think it was 3 death threats from different parents.
Oh.
Apparently that is incredibly rare in anyone's career, to have a death threat. But I had 3 in a very short amount of time from different people.
Yeah.
So it was after that that I started noticing the effects of the burnout. But it wasn't that I started. Well, I think that the burnout stuff was probably a lot of the cumulative stuff, but then that like had really hit something that I didn't know what to do with. And like at the time I was like, oh, it's fine, block it out, get on and do the job, because that was
work it, just get it done.
and that was the context that you're working in. I found as my career's gone on, the roles that I've stepped into, like talking about being more of your true self, the roles that I've stepped into, I share so much more of myself. But the way that I work now, there is no way that it would have been either safe or appropriate or okay to work in a way where I am so much of myself in the way that I work. Back then it's very much like you're in high risk situations, you're dealing with safety stuff, you're making risk assessments, like you've got lawyers and magistrates who are going through every single thing that you've ever written, and every single interaction, anything you do can be used against you in court. So it's a very different way of operating in the world. And also the way that you share yourself and what you're struggling with, and the way that you're dealing with the work is very different as well, because there's almost like a pack mentality around, well, everyone's struggling and, someone has to go out because these kids there needs to be a response made. Very different kind of context. And also if you look at child protection versus, lawyers, police, all of these kind of things, you look at what the police have access to. Like I think they get like double leave per year. They get like all these, they get like a whole bunch of extra benefits because of the type
of the job, what they're exposed to.
Child protection work. You're often walking into houses that not going to.
But like I hear that dissonance or like, anyway, that disparity that, yes, I mean, it's great. Like our emergency services often do have, yes, that and their families often too linked to psychological services, counseling services, support around them, because they are going into these situations. But so too are, child protection workers, social workers. They're often, I mean, you've already shared that insight there, but there's not there's not that support around you. It's because everyone's struggling, all the workers, it's just get in, and there's people in need, your children in need, you're out there, you're doing your thing, and there's no support for you. So with that context, it doesn't really allow or help you to be able to address any issues or even prevent, so that was your experience as well. Here you are, that cumulative burnout, probably vicarious trauma as well, those death threats, and not knowing what to do, but even not knowing where to go, or having any direction with that by your team, by the child protection services.
Yeah, I think there is like some of that stuff in place, like the psychology and the supervision. Although you have to often advocate to have supervision because everyone's so busy.
So it's there on paper, but not there. Yeah.
Often, unless you really push for it. So there's a lot of there are things on paper, but then there's also the reality of the work as well. So yeah, I guess my story was that I burnt out really badly. I was married for 2.5 years. Apparently, that's amazing, and that's a very long time.
Okay. Yeah.
And I wouldn't change it for the world. Absolutely wouldn't change it for the world. But I suppose stepping into the out-of-home care space initially when I was doing casework, my thing was that once again, really passionate, really excited, really wanted to do really great quality work, but also saw that there was this thing in the system where like kids would kind of be shuffled around between workers. I was adamant that I wanted to have the same caseload and do really great work with the kids that I was working with, and wanted to give some kind of stability over time. So that had its own challenges as well. And it meant that at times I was holding on to far too high of a caseload. At times I have like multiple kids that are kind of firing up at once or going on. And so
that workload as well, like the load not matching capacity. Like your human capacity.
Hugely, yeah. And then I suppose at that point, like, after like I hadn't slept from the time of the death threat stuff. I hadn't slept proper nights for like, it ended up being like 5 years. My sleep was off the charts, and there were other pieces in my physical body that were going on, and that starts having an impact on your personal life. So it sort of felt like the whole personal life went away because work kind of ends up all consuming.
I got you. Yeah.
And then, so I guess that was at that point what was largely going on for me, but also feeling like you're kind of almost on this like hamster wheel.
Yes. Yeah. Often a lot of clients describe that, and that's how I was like, oh, I'm just totally in this rat race. Like I was, I feel like I was part of this rat race, and how did I get here? And I don't even want to be in the rat race. What the hell's going on? Anyway, but you felt like you're on this hamster wheel, and your health, I mean, our sleep is so paramount to our health. But then also your social personal life withering away, which is another sign, a big sign that, certainly things are not great. But this was all happening. And you said you also, you're not sure what to do or where to go. And whilst there's support mechanisms in place, they weren't necessarily accessible unless you really beat down the door. But when you're sleep deprived, burnt out, traumatized, it's not really the space that you feel you're in to go, and I don't know about you, but like to go and advocate for yourself. But we need those services to be there and almost come to us.
Yes, and it's almost like you're in this state where you can't even think properly or clearly anyway.
A haze. Yeah. Those cognitive capacities, that's a big part of burnout too, and definitely trauma as well. Any trauma condition, just anxiety in general, like it it just impacts that part of our brain that's able to think, decision make, reason, all those really great things that we need to do our job and need to live, but they certainly go down. And that description of, sometimes people say fog, haze. It's just almost like, I describe it like it was very similar when I got COVID. I got the fog. That was the biggest thing with mine, and it stayed for quite a while, the brain fog, even once I recovered. And my burnout fog, a little bit different, but it felt like I was like, I can't get my brain to work. Anyway, yeah.
And it's like people are like, oh, why don't you take a chill day, or why don't you take a
Mm.
week off or something? It's like it's actually bigger than that. Like that stuff
Yeah.
doesn't, when you get to that point, that stuff doesn't actually make a single difference. But like,
No.
you may as well just keep working through and
Mm.
hopefully get a bit of traction,
Yeah.
which obviously doesn't work either because you're not doing the best quality work.
No, but that's the thing. Hey, yeah, what could work is not enough, or could help along the way, but isn't going to be enough. And it's easy to stick into the patterns we know, just to keep going on. What did like? I mean, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead in your story with the social work side of your burnout and what we're learning vicarious trauma experience as well. What did sort of start to help? What? Because I know, as you said, your burnout was cyclic, but was there something that eventually helped there for you to come a little bit out of it or out of it?
Yeah, I think it's sort of, there have been times where I kind of have gone in and out of it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was saying to a friend not that long ago that, you know, would occasionally get to this point where I would be like, do I even want to do this anymore?
Oh,
And
yeah.
then I would think about what I would want to do instead.
Mm-hmm.
And it's changed a little bit now, but through the whole social work time, the only thing I could think of that I would rather do is be a florist.
Oh,
And I'm
do
like,
you?
fun. Wouldn't it be fun to just, gather flowers in pretty arrangements all day? I think that would be fun. And then at some point, I would be like, would I be really satisfied doing that? And then I would go, I don't actually think I would. And then I'd be like, what else would I want to do? The only other things I could think about doing were all social work related. And I'd be like, okay, social work it is.
Mm.
Like, what do I need to do to get back on track?
Yeah. So that heart, it was, you were on your true path. The work was aligned.
Mm,
And at the same time, it was exhausting you.
mm,
So hence that, like, because that's such a phenomenon that I hear constantly. Mine was barista, be a barista. I was actually before I became a psych, but I was going to go back there because life was simpler. But it was more or the way I kind of put it is, it was my body telling me that I needed a rest. It wasn't that I needed to change my careers as such. I needed a rest from my career. But yeah, but when you're in that space, it's not so clear. I only figured that out afterwards. And I hear florist a lot. Florist comes up. Yeah.
I shifted in the entrepreneurial part. I'll explain more about it later.
Yes.
But I had a point where I was like, it was a hat maker, like a milliner. And I was like, that would be so fun. I could, Melbourne Cup, all the
Yeah.
things. But then when I really thought about it, I was like, if I'm a hat maker, I'm pretty sure I still am going to be dealing with people and I'm going to be dealing with money and I'm still doing business. So what's the point? I may as well just do what I'm actually here to do on this planet.
And that's the thing too. Yeah. Well, I was like, well, Shan, when you were a barista last time, you were really stressed out, like, because I was still dealing with people. I still had the behavioral patterns that were contributing. So I'm like, it's not going to solve the issue. But I love what with your reflection too, with that florist, and you was like, and social work, will that fulfill me? I mean, when I was at the thick of my burnout, I wasn't, it's often upon reflection, but when I could reconnect with my career, like I was like, well, no, this is my path. This is, I love helping others and I love the psychology world aspects of it. And I still want to be in this space and serve people in a different way and sustainably. But yeah, that thick of the burnout, I was like, I was just wanting to do anything else but I was wanting to rest. And usually it was things that were creative or less focused, like brain focus, less emotionally. It was just all the things my body was not getting that it was looking for in a different career. Yeah. But hey, like, yeah, I feel like is there anything else on that in that social work side that you want to share with us, whether it's other things that you learned about the burnout cycles there or things that helped or worked to bring you up a little bit from it? Yeah.
Mm. I think there's definitely been a lot that I've learned. I don't know if, I think maybe I'll be better at integrating it later on. But
Yeah.
when I was doing the stuff towards the end, all the stuff around helping young people share their story.
Yeah, that sounded amazing, by the way. Like I was just like, wow, what great work. But yeah.
Oh, it was so fun. That's why I was there for so many years. And it's really built the foundation of Aspire in so many ways, in the way that I do things,
Yeah.
which is very left of center. But I mean, it still doesn't mean that there weren't, like, there were still big challenges. And it wasn't the same level of burnout, but there were times where I came close to it as well. And that at that point, I had an extremely active life outside
Oh,
work.
yeah.
So I was doing a lot in work, but in this time it wasn't about doing the front end really hardcore stuff, even though I was still doing a lot of front end work with young people. It was a different kind of front end work.
Yeah.
And this work was extremely creative and putting together a lot from scratch. However, I was part of a team where we were all extremely passionate and we used to, like, same thing, push the bar in a different way. So, and she smiles.
Yeah, I love it. I love the pushing the bar
There we
and
go.
creating. But it sounds like there was a lot of things in this position that, like, I just feel like there was a lot of things that might have been in psychology. We call them, like, I don't know if they do this in social work, but protective factors, but just things that essentially things that actually support us, our well-being, you know, that are aligned with us, like creativity. You mentioned already in the intro that you're a big picture person and you got to, you know, create or see that big picture and then create the path there. And you're working in a team with that shared passion that can be very contagious and helpful too. Like, it just seems like there were some protective factors, if that makes sense. Doesn't mean that we don't still, like, because there's other things that burn us out, but may have, yeah, just helped you stay more buoyant or not as sinking in that time. I don't know, what's your thoughts?
I think in that time, I think I was extremely buoyant actually. And I think part of that was in working with young people as well. And as you said, like the style of work and the creativity in it. And we did have a stable team. I think that is extremely
because you said there was a lot of turnover in the work, and I've heard that in child protection as well. But yeah, and that unstable work environment certainly doesn't help.
Yes.
And you also said you had at that time extremely active outside work life, which there is some research around those who are in high pressure jobs and, you know, intense jobs, but not burning out or at all or to the level. Usually part of what protects them is they have a strong outside life that helps them focus differently and feeds them. So, you know, that, you know, could be part of that protective as well. But what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think sometimes I probably overdid the outside work stuff as well.
Yeah. So it's,
well, I got super into dancing and then I just
oh,
got
the dancing, yeah.
and all the things. And this is the thing, I find my things and then I'm super excited and I'm down the rabbit hole and you can't find anymore. So
that's the non-protective factor. That's the one, whether it's at work or at home in your personal life, it's the one that can cause some upheaval or a lot.
Yes.
Extremely passionate.
Passionate, excited, all of that kind of stuff. It's funny, I don't know if you know much about Ayurvedic medicine, but in Ayurveda there are like 3 constitutions, and I'm a mix between the air and the fire. So I joke that I'm like a wildfire.
Yeah, I was like, I watch a few of those shows about like fires in like California and even Australia as well. Yeah, air and fire. I'm like, oh my god. Yeah.
Yes. So, which serves a purpose.
Extremely.
So it also can be quite detrimental as well. So I think at that point, I mean, if I was to talk about protective factors overall, firstly, my sleeping is good now. My sleeping has been good for a long time. Yeah, very long time. It's been fine. I've always been quite good with my diet and exercise. And like I've always been really big on, you know, doing lots of yoga, lots of dance, that kind of stuff that really gets you in your body. And I think a big thing is that with the air constitution, things tend to spin around in your head. If you're not moving your body enough, then things get stuck in your head and they don't have the capacity to almost like be brought down into your body and processed.
Yeah. So the flow of air, you need movement. Yeah. I think I'm understanding that. Yeah.
Overthinking as much. Actually, that's a really good point as well.
Oh, overthinking. Yeah. Sorry, is it that I was just like, oh wow, yeah. Like if things are, just from how I see them, yeah, and that stuckness in your thoughts. But how, like I find I've just noticed that when I do walking and I'm out in nature and walking, because I'm a very busy mind, I find the mind settles. I haven't used any of my cognitive, psychotherapy tricks. I've just simply gone for a walk, but in nature and really mindfully absorbing my environment. Yeah, how that helps. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. What was the other thing I was going to say? I journal a lot, so I process a lot of what goes on in my brain. I fill endless amounts of paper with words. But
Journaling is such a great mechanism, right? As I use it, don't use it as much now, but I, certainly advocate it for people to try and see if it, helps support them. Yeah, you do, but it work. Yeah, it's something that helps you. Yeah.
yes, I think I had this realization around the time that I started journaling, actually, that anxious energy or nervous energy and creative energy are actually the exact same thing.
Mm.
So, and that was around the time that I started doing creative work, where I got to create my own stuff from scratch. And I found that the more that I created from scratch, the less anxious my mind was, because it was like I had a redirect for the creative energy. Like it was like, instead of turning something into a problem, I'd go, oh, how do I create a solution to this?
Oh,
Right?
love that. Wow.
Yes, that has
Oh,
been a
love that.
massive shift in my life.
Yeah, pop that one down, listeners. I know I will be. That's amazing.
Turn
Wow.
this into how do I create a solution? How do I become creative with this?
Use that energy to put into creating a
Mm,
solution. I just love even that word, compared to I'm very language based and rather than problem solution, but like that word creative to me sparks that I don't want to call good energy or whatever. It just sparks energy to motivate to do something. Whereas if I'm going, I've got to find a solution to the problem, I kind of, for me, I go, well, I don't want to. I'm just going to sit here and be anxious or go around in my thoughts. But wow. So that was something else that has supported you and continues to support you as well.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I suppose a lot of it has created what I'm doing in the world, right? Like now, I'm not trained as a writer, and a lot of people say to me, like, "How did you become a writer?" I'm like, "I don't know. I wrote court reports when I was like 22." Like,
You've always been a writer, different,
yeah,
but a writer.
but it's transitioned to now part of my work in the world and the narrative therapy, and now I help
Yeah.
women articulate their stories and all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What else? I think, surrender.
Oh, tell me.
Surrender. Oh my gosh. Can I tell you about the entrepreneurial part? Then I'll tell you about the surrender part.
Hi there. A small intrusion to share with you my book, Nothing Left to Give. I know it comes up in the show sometimes, so I wanted to share with you a little bit about this book. So this is the book that I wrote, well, basically the journals I kept while I was burnt out and made the commitment to overhaul my life in order to undo the very things that got me burnt out in the first place. So perfectionism, people pleasing, very good at nurturing others, but not myself, or allowing others to nurture me, just to name a few. And I've also included the practices that I like to call wellness practices that supported me along the way to getting better. So I hope my story at least helps you not feel so alone in this and helps you along the way. So available on Amazon, but other online retailers as well. I'll leave the link to where you can purchase the book in the show notes. Thank you for allowing me to abruptly and rudely interrupt your episode, but now back to the episode. Take care of you. Yeah, tell us about that and where that burnout and how it showed up there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm actually really quite passionate about this at the moment, because I don't feel like it gets enough of a voice, or it's starting to more. Maybe I'm more, attuned to it now.
Mm.
When I set off with Aspire. It'd been like what we've been in the pandemic 2 years or something. Who knew? Who knew how long it'd been sort of to go back to Australia? All that stuff. Whole
Yeah.
life had fallen into the gutter. All of that. So on the other side of that, the 1st of January 2022, I had this big fire after feeling like I was kind of in a slump for a good 2 years going. And that was never a position that I had been in my life. I'd always had lots of opportunities, lots of open doors, lots of I can move and orient myself in the world however I want to. But during the pandemic, being that almost stuck.
I got that sense. And just as you shared, I was like, yeah, you're such a, well, as you described, that fire in you, and even that air part, it needs movement. They work together and you weren't able to move. You got stuck there. And how that would have just affected you emotionally, mentally, physically during that time.
Just felt completely off. And I just felt I just felt like, what am I actually doing here? And there was obviously a lot of stuff going on under the surface, and a lot of it was related to me needing to let go of a lot from the world, but also reorient my thinking and learning how to be a different person in the world who I didn't yet know how to be. But it was like,
that was that transition, between letting go of the old but not quite knowing the new. That transitional,
in this liminal space, this in-between space. But something happened on the 1st of January 2022.
Where
I just had this, it was like a light flicked, like a light flicked on. And something in me just went, go hard, go fast, go now. And the year before, I'd already had the vision, I'd had all the things, and I was like, okay, I know enough to get started. What Aspire wants to be. So I literally did that. I was like, I don't know where to start, but I was like, just start messaging people, start just doing things, just start doing anything. And I'd had the vision of the book, and I was like, okay, I know how to put a book together. I know, the main bits that I need to do. The rest I can Google and open a book and see what's inside it and figure out what to do. Like I can do that. Also extremely resourceful. Like that thing which was essential to get me out of that space that I was in, like that flat, almost like a dead space. Like all I needed was an enormous amount of energy, and that thing just going, just go now. And that was incredible because it was like, I made an analogy the other day. It was like sitting in like a VW at the bottom of a hill, and you just got to hit it in first gear and just rev the crap out of it and get it to hill as quickly as possible and not think twice. Like that's what it's like.
Just do. Sorry, I just, as I said that, I went, oh my God, that's Nike's. So it's like, just do it. Don't even think, just do it. Thank you, Nike. This is not endorsed. Wow, but that was, and I just think about you. I just think about how strong that part of you that is connected to your body. Like you've got that, that strong connection to listening to yourself, and so being able to pick up on that cue, that voice, that intuition, or whatever you call it. Because I find that for some others, they're not there yet in terms of that really being attuned to their body, really attuned. They're still in that process. They're really caught up in more of what they're thinking about rather than what are they feeling and what's my intuition telling me. A lot of the work that I do is helping them move into their bodies, but that body connection is so important because you pick up on these things and then able to act on it to help you move in your vitality direction. That's amazing. I just wanted to acknowledge that straight. And obviously that's come through everything that you do, all the work that you do to take care of yourself. I think like dances, yoga, that really helps with that body connection.
And I think that's part of the Bali journey as well. And part of the reason why I was in that bubble. Bali is very much a bubble.
Yeah.
Good. And it's part of when we're talking about the protective factors that started really coming through. Like they'd come through years ago from around the time I started journaling, but they've come through far more strongly now. I am very intuitive and I do follow the nuggets. Like the more that you follow the nuggets, the stronger your intuition gets.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so when that happened, I was like, obviously, like that in itself, like hearing that, like it's like crap, that's like a burnout alarms going off all over the planet. But at the same time, when you're in survival and if you are like, okay, I've got this fire to burn and I've got an idea and a seed and I just need to go for it. That's where I was at. And
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm just going for it. And I was in tunnel vision for probably, I would say the first 18 months
Wow.
of that time. And during that time, I had mold poisoning. My housing was all over the place because I left my house because I had mold from it. And I was actually too afraid during a part of that time to commit to having a house in case it had mold again. Like I was walking
Yeah.
cafes, like looking around, darting around like this, going, "Where's the mold?" Like there was a big
Oh.
attached to
Yeah.
being inside buildings. And
Yeah.
been to a wood, like the whole place, like wherever you go, there's mold on everything.
Okay.
So, and also coming out of a pandemic, but then being like, well, I don't actually know how to go back to Australia or even if I want
Mm.
to. So it's this weird space to be in. And also
Mm.
being in a space where I was building this thing that just wanted to be huge from the start, building it as quickly as possible, doing it on my own,
Yeah.
coming out of a space where I've been quite flat. And also feeling like everything had fallen down around me. And this was kind of the only thing that I was hanging on to or that I
Yeah.
had going on. So I was like, I've just got to throw everything at this and hopefully it works out.
Yeah, it's almost that further drove you because other things were just, yeah, as you've described, that it almost like I get the sense of that work was almost like a drug as well, like because it's like it's keeping me going. But at the same time, that hype of or that, that focus and not having that off switch or that off time or that restorative time was contributing to that experience of burnout in this entrepreneur area. Is that what? Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess like there's even in the entrepreneurial world, there's like so many messages around like, how to be a successful, what it means to be successful. Like you're in a different, it's a very different realm of the world.
Okay.
And you only get paid if you show up. It's not like I'm not feeling good, I'm going to go on sick leave and it's okay, I'm taken care of.
Yeah.
It's like that doesn't exist anymore. And it's like if something
Mm.
goes ahead, you're like, awesome, my rent's paid this month. If it then falls through, you're like, crap, now what? Like it's like you kind of it goes like this, and it takes a while to find your own middle ground and your own
Yeah.
way of knowing how to hold yourself in that, but also to hold the work
Yeah.
and to hold the vision, regardless of whether things are showing up or not, and to have big conversations around all of that.
Mm.
So many different components at play.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a journey like no other, absolutely no like no other. But I came through the first 18 months and had the first summit, and then I continued to work on. I wasn't in a position to stop, and now having run the second summit, I understand a little bit more about the what goes on in the energetics of
Mm-hmm.
understanding of running something so big.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like you kind of go up this bell curve and then you come back down the other side. You can't just what I experience is like the day that it ends, people think, oh, you go home and just drink cocktails and sit on a beach and life is good. Your event's over. But
Yeah.
it's actually like that because it's like there's kind of almost like a wind down. There's so much that needs to happen afterwards. And
Yeah.
it's almost like your body has been expanded to hold this thing and then it kind of needs to gradually come back down to size. Like after you've given birth, you
Yeah,
don't go,
actually, I had that visualization. Yes. Yes.
yes,
Wow.
there's actually a good 6 to 8 weeks on either side of, and it's almost like it expands to the point where it takes over your whole life,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it comes back down again. So I'm just coming out the other side of the second summit. And now on my reflections, going, what actually is this process that you go through? So
Mm.
I had to go through that. But what I did
Mm.
at the end of that second one is I finished the trip that I was meant to leave Australia to do, which I was meant to end up in the Mediterranean, skipped all the middle bit,
Mm.
went to the Mediterranean, did all of that, then came out the other side. And basically the last 12 months has been a huge, or that 10 months ended up being a huge soul journey of going,
Mm.
okay, now that I've got this thing up off the ground, what
Mm.
do I need for myself? And what does my soul need? What
Mm.
do I actually want my life to look like? And how do I now construct this thing that's called a business in
Yeah.
a way where I get to live life as well? And
Mm.
where it's not all consuming, it's not the initial startup. People get what it is, they get who I am,
Mm-hmm.
what this thing's about. I've built a little bit of recognition. Now,
Mm.
how do I reorder that? And also,
Mm.
what I realized today is I didn't realize that I was burnt out in the way that I was. It was actually
Mm.
going through that time and, spending time back in Australia and going, if I was to live back in Australia, what would I want that to be like? Where would I want to be? Who would I want to
Mm.
be around? And
Mm.
just giving myself space to be able to do all of that
Mm.
while I was a lot more surface level on the business in that time.
Yeah.
The way
Mm.
that I see it is when you have your own business, whatever work you do for yourself improves the business anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, look, I mean, yeah, any work, yeah. The stuff that you do for yourself is going to help your business. Yeah. But I can see that trickiness on in that startup phase where it's almost like in order to get that traction, and I know there was other things going on for you too that was contributing to that, but needing to go, yeah, hell to leather and getting a name for yourself, building that and how that overstretched you, but to get that business up and running, because there's things like that financial stability, like, because there's no sick pay, holiday pay. And I think it's so wise that you made that choice when you could to prioritize yourself, to figure all that out. So how you move with the business, taking care of it by taking care of you. Now that there is traction, it's almost like it makes me think of seasons. But as long as we do that, as long as we're as entrepreneurs or whatever we're doing, we're not constantly in that chronic work overload, whether it's driven by passion or whatever, we're not designed to be chronically overextending ourselves. We're designed to have those ups and those, we could have periods of acute work, level, but we're not designed to be constantly in that. And even 18 months is a long time too. But from what you've shared, as to why.
yeah. So I guess it's something that's been really interesting in the last year, and that you know
Yeah.
I did take things more at a surface level way. The business continued to grow.
Mm.
There's been a lot in terms of, as you said, attunement. Like I think my level of attunement is so much stronger now, and
Mm.
and being really honest about the season that the business is in, as you mentioned,
I
but
like,
also
yeah. Mm.
also the season that I'm in, and just really,
Mm.
I said, so much attunement around what needs to happen and in what way and in what order. And, my to-do list is always forever
Mm.
long, but
They are,
also
aren't they?
things aren't always going to happen on time.
Mm.
Things aren't always going to be perfect. There are going to be times where I line everything up and it all falls apart. There are going to be
Mm.
times where it feels like nothing's happening and something amazing appears out of nowhere.
Mm.
And
Mm.
learning to kind of hold yourself at an equilibrium regardless of what is going on. Sometimes I suck at that massively, but I think I'm generally pretty good at these days kind of holding that middle ground. So I remember there was one point at the summit where a couple of women said to me, "Oh my God, you must be on the biggest high right now." And I was like, "No, I'm good." Because
Mm.
it kind of programmed my mind to be like,
Mm.
if I'm not going to be down here, it's also important to moderate up here as well.
Mm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So finding that calm in the storm, not to say, but just, yeah. And it's such a practice, and and there's lots of things that can help support us to find that space. And it sounds like everything that you're doing allows you to find that space at times, which helps support your system to be able to do the things that you love doing.
Yeah, I think something that's been really important, and it was something that came up maybe about 6 months, 8 months after I got started in like
Mm.
that big uphill bit. So it would have been 2 years ago now. I was like, at some point, I was like, where is my soul? Feel like I've been so immersed in going, get this thing done, get this thing done, get this thing done, get this thing done, that I've left my soul on the footpath somewhere behind me. And I don't
Mhm.
even remember where it is. That's
Yeah.
actually not okay, especially when you're working with humans. How can we not be working if we've left our soul somewhere down the street?
Totally. Yeah. But it
Actually,
happens, doesn't it? Like, yeah. Mm.
it
Mm.
actually does. And so it was almost like I felt like I had to backtrack, like I had to hit
Yeah.
reverse, go back and get it and go,
Yeah.
hey, now we can get back down the street again. I
Mm.
think like integration is enormous, absolutely enormous, like especially when we are doing so much stuff with people. Like
Mm.
you have to appreciate that yes, we're helping people create change, but we're also going through change because of and through them and with them as well.
Mm.
And
Mm.
if we're not giving ourselves the space to integrate what's shifting and merging and evolving, then
Mm.
of course we're going to get burnt out because we're not bringing our whole self on the journey.
Mm.
So that's something that I've learned, and as this
Yeah.
year it's really pivotal because I'm very good at going, yep, I've got a gap there, I can put that in there, and I've got a gap there, I can put that in there. But it's like I've had so many things this year go, no, we want to be spaced out further. Like you need more space than what you think you need to do this, even though the
Mm.
time is in the diary. And it's not even about like, going out with friends or going to movies or whatever. It's about just giving yourself space to integrate all of the things that are shifting and moving and turning and evolving.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. That is something, and not in those words, but certainly a process I've recognized that I wasn't, and working with others in this too, like I wasn't giving myself enough space. My work is very people focused as well, obviously. And the way in which I was working prior was not giving my mind, body, and soul the space it needed to integrate what she was experiencing. And now, because I'm more attuned with myself and had that healing space and giving myself space, now I notice how much my body, mind, and soul is affected by those interactions, and then having the space in my diary to purposely, or and I love what you said. I've said that to myself. You need more than what you think you do. Like, so let's put more in, but I now have that space. So I'm not going to the next thing. And I'm like you, I get tempted sometimes. Like I had a potential new client wanting to see me a little bit earlier, and it wasn't an urgent situation. And I was like, no, and I was like, oh, I could do that. And I went, no, that's not going to be enough space to process and do everything in terms of what, like, I had that day to process that stuff. That integration, such an important point you've brought up there. We need that space, and some of us need more of it. We're all different creatures, but I think we all need it. We all need it. Just sometimes some need more than others. As well.
Yeah.
But yeah, is there anything else from that entrepreneur time and your experience of the burnout there? And as you said, it was different, but
Mm.
that it was still there. Is there anything else from that experience that you want to share with us?
Mm. I think the biggest thing is to refer back to there are two things. One is the cool thing about being an entrepreneur is that yes, the demands are much higher in many ways
Mm.
or in a different way, but you also get the capacity to work how you want to work.
Mm.
And I think there's something really beautiful in being able to give yourself permission for that. Like as a woman, and this is something that is so organic in Bali, but still isn't a Western world thing.
Mm.
Like in Bali, like if you're on the first day of your period, for someone even if it's their whole period, like they just don't go anywhere and they just don't interact with people. And you just say, yeah, sorry, I'm not going. I've got my period. People go, oh, okay. Yeah, like being able to go, you know what? This is going to be day one. So
Mm.
I'm just going to cancel this, or I'm going to stay in bed longer, or I'm going to have more time for myself in the afternoon, and just really honoring that kind of stuff.
Mm.
It's like,
Mm.
it's almost like another level of self care. And I don't talk about self care that much.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's a part of life.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I know what you mean. That kind of word's been muddied, and it's
mm,
more deeper than that. I think self-care gets, yeah, associated with a lot of that surface stuff, and that stuff, okay, that matters. But yeah, this is more this deeper stuff. But yeah, I have heard about cultures that practice that, the women practice that, and that the whole culture accepts that. was listening to an episode, I think it was the Neurodivergent Women, that woman podcast, and they were talking about, or interviewing someone about the cycle, a woman's hormonal cycle, and how our working world, at least in the Western world, is not set up to be able to work with that. And the beauty of entrepreneurship, one of those being able to work in the way that we want to work, but also a way in which works for our bodies as well. Yeah, so I love that what you're bringing up. It's things that I'm just learning about, and going, oh, that makes sense. I'm different every week. Even my husband says, he's like, okay, is it the week before? Because I'm noticing these signs. But yes, it is. But that, well, my body needs something different this week, or my body needs something different this day. All of this is normal and natural. I need to change to support that. And being an entrepreneur, I can do that.
Yes. Yes. And I'm not an expert in this stuff, but I do understand that like each week of your cycle, like there is a different thing that you're best at doing. And if you can kind of navigate yourself to go with your energy levels, then, and the type of energy that's coming out, then things can actually be much easier. Like there are times where I'm like, I actually just want to get out and meet people. I do not want to write or sit in front of my laptop or type a single thing. So it's like, okay, you prioritize that. And there are other times where it's like, I just want to sit and do really deep work and not even speak to a person this week. So if you can navigate that, and, lessen the amount of calls or the amount of time you have to be outside the house or whatever, then that's really, really powerful. Absolutely incredibly powerful. And I think that's like a whole nother level of honoring self, right? Like we talk about boundaries, talk about, all of that kind of stuff, but it's like, do we actually honor our energy levels? And I think that's actually a lot of the time the biggest thing. Like there are times where I could go with like 6 hours sleep and I'm so happy and I'm like, I don't care. I just want to get all this stuff done. And there are other times where it's like, I've got maybe 3 hours in me.
I love that phrase, honoring it. It really, I don't want to simplify things too much, but I feel like in the work that I've done too, personally, but also professionally, often it comes down to honoring our energy levels and learning how to connect with that, and then finding what work, finding our rhythm, what our energy levels are like, and finding what works, what doesn't, and trying to find that place, which it's always changing. Obviously, it's not, our energy levels are not the same each day, but such a vital. I was about to use the word self-care, but care factor when it comes to looking after ourselves and helping us sustain but also thrive in life. But what wisdom that you have gained through your experiences in life too. And I wonder, like, is there a particular, out of everything that you've experienced, if you had one thing that you wanted a listener to sit with or take away from your experiences, what would that be?
I feel like I haven't spoken about the surrender thing yet, but I feel like
that's right, I forgot about that. I apologize. Speak to the surrender and anything else that you would love the listeners to know. It's your floor. So sorry, my memory can do that, like it's like completely forgot.
That's okay. I forgot too until you asked me, and I was like, okay, there's two things coming
surrender.
To me.
Awesome.
Yeah. There are times where things are lining up and there are times where they're not, and all of it is perfect. And there are ways that we can embrace all of it. Like I remember in that first year of Aspire, like I would do everything that I knew how to do. And then when I hit a block, I would just go, now I don't know what to do anymore. And I would just go, you know what? Just let go and go for a swim. Just let go and go for a walk. Just let go and go out dancing. Just let go and do something else. Like there's no point in trying to sit with what I'm trying to do and trying to push up against what isn't going anywhere. So you know what? Just give it space. Just give things space and go and do me. Go and do life. Go and have a snooze.
I love that. Is that the surrender?
I think that's part of surrender. I think
yeah.
The surrender and letting go, like they're very similar, right? In some.
But I love that. Like, when you come up against a block and you're continually kind of pushing, but you're getting nowhere, switch. Like that's just what came to mind there, switch. But go do something for yourself. Because what I like, the things that you chose too, it sounds like They were completely opposite to what you were doing there. Like that was very focused work, very driven. The others were like play, fun. Not to say that your work, because I know you're very passionate, but the work, the other things you were choosing, I'd imagine were using different parts of your brain and allowed that, I don't know, that stuff to flow, to move, help you go back to your work when you next were. I love that. Yeah, I love that.
I feel like sometimes the pieces of the puzzle just aren't ready to be there yet. And it's
Yeah.
like you can't, no matter how much your one human vessel tries to make the thing happen, if someone else has to have a realization and that they want to come and see you and then they walk in the door, if they haven't had that realization yet, there might be nothing you can do before that happens, or whatever it is. Like, the weather needs to change and somebody changes their opinion about something. Like, you don't know what the thing is. So sometimes it's just like, I actually am not in control of this thing. So
Yeah.
I think there's something really big in acknowledging that we're not actually in control and we're an employee of what we're doing. We're not we're the owner and we're the holder, but we actually don't have control of every single moving piece. And if we try to, I think we sometimes cause more damage, both to ourselves and to what we're trying to achieve in the world.
Yeah, true.
So I think that is the letting go and the surrender and just going, I'm just going to do what I can do. And if I can't do any more, then hopefully I've just done enough that we've done what needs to happen, or I will have that kind of that insight or that intuition or that kick up of my energy that has me go, okay, now it's time to go full steam ahead. But
Yeah.
that thing hasn't happened yet, then maybe it's just not time, and that's okay.
Well, yeah, so many really important elements there, being able to let go of what we can't control, surrendering to that, but also knowing that, yeah, sometimes it's just not time yet. That piece that is outside of your control hasn't fallen yet. And I'd imagine, like, because you've mentioned what you're doing in the world, and if people are curious and they want to check out your work and those books as well with the aspiring women that you have out there, and also the ones coming as well, because I think you said the one with the 50 African women and is not out yet, but coming.
Coming out, yes. So there's the next two coming out in the next few months. Yeah.
So how best to find out more about you and what you're doing in the world?
Yeah, so I can be found through the Aspire series. Aspire, not Inspire. Aspire. Yeah, online, www.theaspireseries.com, or I'm on Instagram, or I'm on Facebook as well. My name is Michelle Gardiner, and all of the accounts should be connected anyway. So,
Yeah.
and on
And I will make sure that I leave those details in the show notes, so no one has to remember or write that down, but then look in the show notes, because I'll pop those links there as well, so you can can connect with Michelle's work as well. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to unpack and explore and hear of your experiences of burnout, both in that social work field and also in the entrepreneur side of things as well. And as you said, and I haven't had a guest from that entrepreneur side, business owners, so maybe a little bit, but but not that sort of direct focus there. And so hearing some insights of what can certainly contribute and ways to support to help through. It's been just really amazing to have you here and hearing all that wisdom from you. So from the bottom of my heart, or my full heart, thank you so much for your willingness and courage for sharing you with us today.
Shannon, thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for listening as well.
Yes, thank you. And don't forget to follow. No. Thank you so much, Michelle. And I know this won't be the last time I'll be in touch with you, but yeah, thank you.
My pleasure.
Me again. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this episode of When Burnout Becomes Reality podcast. I do hope that you have gained some insight, wisdom, or taking away something from this episode that is helpful for you with wherever you're at in your burnout journey, or helping others with. Please also reach out. I'd love to hear from the listeners, the viewers, to find out what you're finding helpful, maybe what you still would like to know. So please don't hesitate to follow, subscribe, comment, review, like, shoot me an email. I have my details in the show notes. And if you are in need of services around burnout and you are an Australian citizen, I, in my business, Burnout Psychology Support, do offer group and individual services, telehealth, as well as in-person in Brisbane. So again, check out the show notes. I have my contact details, but the best thing to do is jump on my website at www.burnoutspsychologysupport.com. And just a reminder, of course, to reach out for personalized help. This podcast, whilst we strive to deliver information that can be supportive and educational for you, it is not tailored to meet your personal needs. And burnout is very individualized in terms of what gets us into burnout and what helps support us in getting out. So please do seek professional support. And I think that is it for me to share with you. Thank you once again, and take care of you. Bye for now.